The issues you care about, a show that digs deeper. It's The Jay Lawrence Show on News Talk 92.3 KTAR.
Once again, I am so glad you're here tonight. Thank you for letting us be part of your evening. The smell of perfume wafting through the studio after Rob's guest. That's nice, though. That's a wonderfully. It's nice to come into a studio that has a feminine touch to it, and they left little buns. Wait, blueberry muffins is what they left. Jon Hulburd is with us. Jon Hulburd, I'm so glad you're here.
It's great to be here.
Thank you. We have a lot of things coming up this evening on the program. We're going to talk about the Tea Party later on. We're going to talk about whether it's the greatest thing since sliced bread or the destruction of the Republican Party. Just how far right is the Republican Party going? In Montana right now, the Republican Party is trying to make homosexuality illegal. So how far to the right can you go? The Tea Party candidates, very, very religious in nature for the most part, very Christian orthodoxy, and yet has America moved so far away from religion, so far away from belief in God, Jesus, Bible? Have we moved so far away from that maybe the Tea Party brings us back to a realization of the things that are important in all of our lives? We'll do that later on. We've got booby bracelets. There's a school that says you can't, even if it is for breast cancer awareness, you can't wear a booby bracelet, and if you do, you're going to be thrown out of school. A lot of things straight ahead. Jon, I'm glad you're here tonight, running in District 3 as an answer, as the replacement for John Chaddick, for whom I have the utmost respect, one of the finest congressmen that has ever served our area. I don't know where to start. 1070, let's start with that. Let's start with why you decided to run in a district where Republicans have been in charge forever.
Well, they have been in charge at least for the last, for sure, 16 years with Mr. Shadegg. What I've pointed out to a lot of people is that most incumbents, 90-something%, get reelected. So just because Mr. Shadegg's finishing up his 16th year doesn't mean the district is a Republican lock. It's absolutely one where there are more Republicans than Democrats, but there is a very large chunk, 31% of the district, that are others, independents.
I have said that the worst thing in my life is Nancy Pelosi. It may not be the worst thing in my life, but she is one of them. One of the things, and you as a Democrat, if you go to Washington, must support the Speaker. If the Speaker is Nancy Pelosi, I can only hope that doesn't happen. But your thoughts about Ms. Pelosi?
Well, I kind of question the premise, really. I don't think I have to support leadership on all of the issues, if that's what you mean. For example, you alluded to 1070. The two ones that have gotten a fair amount of press in the last few weeks, now that we're relevant, now that we're in a general election, have been my support of 1070 and also my support of the extension of the Bush tax cuts, and even a portion of them wanting to make them permanent. So those are things that obviously the Speaker and I disagree on. I suspect there are others, and that's true also with President Obama. So I hope your listeners and the people in Congressional District 3 will get a sense over the next couple weeks, and certainly before the early voting starts, just 3 weeks out, that I'm not a rubber stamp for anyone. Certainly not the Republican, Boehner, and certainly not the Democratic Speaker Pelosi.
The things for which you stand must certainly. There must come a time when you say, but I'm a Democrat. And so here are the things Democrats since time immemorial have supported. Card check, for example. Now, Democrats have for a long time been the supporters of unionism, and yet card check is so pro-union and so against the members of unions, not allowing them to vote in secrecy. What are your thoughts on that?
I do support the what's referred to as EFCA, the Employee Free Choice Act. And that is an example where you're absolutely correct. A large group of Democrats support that. And for the most part, Republicans are all against it. I would tell you a couple things about it. Number one, it's a position that I've looked at very closely. I had to take a lot of time on a lot of issues last fall when I first got in to be in a position to say one way or the other. I've studied the matter. I can assure you that I'm not one of those Democrats who says, well, I don't really have a position on it. I hope you'll get the sense in the time we have here tonight that I'm willing to tell you where I stand, and then I stand there. And this is an issue that I do support. It's also an issue that I have friends on the other side. I have Republican friends right now, especially post-primary, that are upset with me on that. But it is where I've been since I got in this race. I can give you a short list of other issues. You'd kind of alluded to other issues that would be more Democratic Party ones, and I think it's a fair listing, and certainly Ben Quayle would agree with this too. For example, privatization of Social Security is a big one for both parties. I'm against it. Ben would be for some or all of it. Another one would probably be some future in clean energy where we put an absolute cost to carbon. And it's shown up most recently with a cap-and-trade bill, but there are other different schemes out there. Nothing's passed the Congress yet on that.
We can only hope cap-and-trade doesn't pass Congress. If you go there and in its present form, you're forced to make a decision on cap-and-trade, where will that decision lead you?
Well, with the Waxman-Markey bill, which was passed, as you well know, about a year ago, nothing's happened in the Senate. So in some capacity, it could get regenerated, so to speak, in the next Congress. I have real problems with the pieces where we are ceding industries and competitiveness to, China and India in particular. And I've had certainly my agriculture friends point that out to me, and manufacturing friends as well. So I think that there's room to grow within that bill, and I've heard from other people that won't even be around in the next cycle. It'll be more like a gas tax or some type of an energy tax. So I don't know what the future is going to hold, but I will tell you this: I am someone who is committed to the concept that there is not only a cost to carbon out there, but there also is this thing called climate change, and that the future in Arizona specifically is clean energy. The idea that we could be taking advantage of not only our abundance of sunshine, but the proximity to California is, to me, very exciting, and it's a long-term commitment to the state. I think it's a real jobs generator long-term.
I think it's interesting that now global warming has become climate change. I mean, we made a very radical change from global warming to climate change. That has happened over the past year, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually comfortable calling it either, to tell you the truth.
All right. You talked about 1070. The Democrats in Congress at this moment seem to be moving toward allowing those in the country legally, or rather those in the country illegally who have not committed crimes to become citizens, or at least to remain in the country. Where are you in that?
Yeah, I'm not so sure that I would characterize the Democratic Party as moving in that direction. I think there is big groups that don't want to move in that direction, and I'm part of that, one of those groups. Since I got in this race last fall, what I've been talking about is, on the one hand, thinking about it as comprehensive immigration reform, and that's usually how it's referred to in the media, and pulling out the piece that's frankly been held hostage for over 2 decades, which is our border security, the piece that we selfishly, that I care about greatly, and not waiting for Washington to do something about it, or better yet, begging for them to do something ASAP. And the good news is, in the last year, just since I've been in this race, certainly not because of me, we're in a position now where the President and the House and the Senate have appropriated, as you know, about $600 million to the full border, in other words, the entire southern border. And on our piece of it, I expect to see the lion's share there. And I am someone who's consistently said more structures, more technology, more bodies down there. Let's fix this problem. Once we fix that problem, I think there'll be plenty of people probably in both parties that want to circle back maybe and revisit comprehensive immigration reform. I personally think it's years away, because until the vast majority of people in the state are convinced that we've got operational control of our border, we're not going to want to do anything.
Our phone number is 277-5827, 277-KTAR. Questions, comments for Jon Hulburd, 277-5827, 277-KTAR. Lines are full. We're going to try to get to all of your calls. Our guest is Jon Hulburd. Jon is running in District 3 for Congress. He's a Democrat.
Don't tell him.
Well, we'll find out. Healthcare. One of the things most Americans, both Democrat and Republican, do not favor is the way the healthcare bill has been shoved on us. And in fact, we're looking for ways, if it can't be repealed, no matter who takes over the House of Representatives, if Republicans take over, at least they can keep from funding it. Your thoughts on I've already expressed my thoughts. Your thoughts on the health care bill?
Well, I think that is the way it's phrased right now is, are you for repealing it? If not, are you for, cutting it off financially? And I'm not for either of those things. I am for holding on to the parts of it that I do like, and I'm also for getting rid of the parts of it that I detest. And I can give you a long list, or I can give you a short list.
How about a short list?
Yeah, I thought you'd say that. A short list on, for example, I'll give you one of each right now, just to give you a sense of this. On the positive side, I am someone who just had a kid get out of college. She's got a new job with a not very good benefits package yet, but she's also got a pre-existing condition. Under the bill, I get to keep her on our policy till she's 26. Some of the pre-existing condition parts of it I like. I think a lot of people like them, and I think that repeal would get rid of that, so I'm not for that. An example of something that I think is wrong is I was following the bill very closely, and the Senate, one of the ways they were trying to pay for it was with this concept of taxing, the way the media would put it, Cadillac plans. That piece got bumped into the stratosphere into 2018, 2020. It was a way, I thought, of at least maybe trying to flatten the unsustainable curve of health care costs. And instead, what the House Democrats seem to have done at the last minute was put in place a 3.8% surtax on unearned income. So that's where capital gains, dividends for people that are selling a house, it could get tacked onto that. I think that's a really bad idea, and I think it's a break on a system. And for the reasons I said earlier, I want to be in a position where we're not raising taxes in the middle of a recession. So that's something I would want to get out instantly.
Phil in Phoenix, News Talk 92.3 KTAR. Hi, Phil. Phil.
Yes, hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, long-time listener, first-time caller. Thank you so much for taking my call.
Thank you, sir.
My question for Mr. Hulburd is, where do you stand on the boycotts that have been proposed in California? A lot of people, especially Raul Grijalva, I think, down in southwest Arizona, supports the boycotts. Where do you land on that? I know, and I take my answer off the air. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I'm a proponent of 1070, so obviously I don't think we should be boycotting the state at any level. I can tell you that in the last couple of weeks, Ben Quayle's camp has been saying that because I've taken some funding from some unions, that therefore I should be in a position where I return those funds because those unions apparently are for a boycott. And to me, it's nonsensical. I don't support the boycotts, and so therefore I don't believe I need to return those funds. But I'm willing to use that type of logic on Ben because he's taken a lot more money from Cerberus Capital. That's a group that brought us the Chrysler bailout, and I'm against the Chrysler bailout. I think Ben says he is. So using his logic, he should give the $60,000 or $70,000 or $80,000 that Cerberus executives have given him. I'm willing to do it if he does.
Hey, Josh, News Talk 92.3 KTAR.
Hey,
hi, Josh.
I'm sorry. It might sound like a stupid question, but 2 years ago, if you'd asked me, I would have called myself an independent. A year ago, I would have called myself a moderate. I really put a lot of stock in Obama. I'll be honest with you. He was real big on this whole bridging the gap between the parties, and I feel insanely betrayed. I got to be honest with you. And my question is, I like everything you have to say. I really do, but I also liked everything Obama had to say. And what I want to know is, what are you willing to do to bridge that gap between the Democrat and the Republican Party right now? Because I feel like I'm forced to either be a very liberal Democrat or a very conservative Republican, and I can't sit in the middle anymore because one side or the other is is pushing me, and I want to know what you're going to do to make me feel more comfortable.
Josh, choose the conservative. Go ahead, John.
Well, I love the way you phrased it, so I would invite you, come into the middle with me. More the merrier. I understand what you're saying. Let me give you just a real quick bio piece that's important. My mom is a Democrat, still alive. My father's passed away a long time ago, but he was a very conservative Republican. I was raised in that type of a bipartisan environment. I've been married for 25 years to a very conservative Republican woman. So I'm in a position where we've raised 5 kids. Our 3 oldest that are voting are independent right now. One of them's Republican and one of them's Democrat. So I get what you're saying. I would tell you that I am a bridge builder. I am someone who lives somewhere in that middle.
Jon Hulburd is with us. Our phone number 277-5827. 277 KTAR. Joe and PT and George, everybody on the lines, you'll get a chance to ask Congressional Candidate Hulburd your questions. All straight ahead.
Once again, Jay Lawrence on News Talk 92.3 KTAR.
Jon Hulburd is with us. Back to the phones in a moment. The 277-5827, 277 KTAR. John is a congressional candidate going against Ben Quayle, well-known name. You've got an uphill fight.
Absolutely. The thing is, though, that everyone knows the name, and they've certainly seen Ben's ads, and they're about to see mine too. But I would tell you that no one knows anything about either of us, really. I mean, his name ID is strong, but exactly who he is and what he's done in the Valley, I think, is still up for grabs, as it is with me. And I'm very much looking forward to the next couple of weeks, again, before people start voting, to be able to kind of square up with Ben on what I've done here in Phoenix, both professionally, socially, in terms of charitable work and things like that, and also just kind of commitment to the Valley, I think, is important. And my own take on Ben is that for a variety of reasons, I have real problems with his maturity or lack thereof and his judgment, and I also think his lack of kind of real life experiences is a tough thing to take right now because. Washington's broken. We both agree with that. But I'll tell you, with the economy the way it is, I think the voters are really looking for people that have had some real-life experiences that they can go in there and say that they're going to use his phrasing, kind of kick the heck or hell out of Washington.
The Bush tax cuts, your thoughts on those, you've already said, I believe, at the top of the hour, but I think it's important to repeat that.
Sure. I've been saying consistently for quite long, for a couple of years now, we're in the middle of a recession. The idea that we're going to raise taxes of any kind in the middle of a recession, I don't think is a partisan issue on one side or the other. It's an economic one, and most of the economists say don't do it. We're now at the place where everything sunsets, everything changes at the end of December, and that's a disaster. It's a disaster right now because with 4 months to go, I don't know what my taxes are going to be next January. That's terrible. That's an indictment on Washington gridlock. And we need to have certainty. The market needs certainty. Big corporations need it to get rid of all that money that's parked on the side right now. And all the S Corps and C Corps, the small businesses need to know what their taxes are going to be like next year. So get market certainty. Let's extend the Bush tax cuts at least through 2012. Let's give everyone an idea of what the next couple of years are going to look like.
Joe's calling from Anthem. Hi, Joe.
Hey, how's it going? I had a question. I was a Jim Waring supporter in the primary, and I really liked the fact that he was walking around and giving a chance to meet voters and giving people honest answers. But I just can't imagine Ben Quayle being like congressman. Are we going to get a chance to see you guys debate? You had mentioned something about that, John.
Thanks for the question. I'm hoping that still happens. We're in week 4 on Tuesday, where we've asked him for a series of debates, 6 in all, a couple of them televised. I'll even come on your radio show too, Jay, if that makes sense.
Oh, love that.
And what I would say is we haven't heard back yet. We got some inkling last week that maybe their camp was interested. Time is ticking. I can't resist jumping in on this caller, though, and saying, at least to Jim Waring, one of the interesting things he did all year long was to walk his district. That's what 65 hours a week he was out doing that. That's a far cry from what Ben Quayle was doing. I mean, what Ben Quayle was doing was raising money out of state. At last count, somewhere in the neighborhood of 75-80% of all his money has come from out of state. And Jim Waring was doing it kind of the old-fashioned shoe leather way. It didn't work this cycle because when you raise over $1 million and pour it into ads, boy, oh boy, shoe leather politics won't beat it.
Back to the calls in a moment. We've got PT. You'll be next. George, David, at 277-5827, 277 KTAR.
Once again, Jay Lawrence on News Talk 92.3 KTAR.
Jon Hulburd is with us, candidate for Congress in Congressional District 3, the district that has been so well represented by John Shadegg for so long. I hated to see Representative Shadegg leave Congress. We'll go to David. David, you've held for quite a while. I thank you for holding. Go ahead.
Hey, thank you, Jay. Good evening, John.
Good evening.
I've got one question and 2 points I'd like to make, all on different subjects, and I can be very quick. On the first one, I have a master's in education, but I was a cop for 21 years. My dictionary is from 1952. And when I look up the words I find in the Constitution and Bill of Rights, I find immigration, and I find the word invasion mentioned in the Bill of Rights a couple times in regards to state rights. Immigration, the definition is an orderly and acceptable practice of people moving from one government to another. Invasion is disorderly movement of masses or hordes of people from one place to the other. And I think they maybe attacked the Federal's objection to 1070 wrong way. They used the definitions, and what we're having is an invasion.
David, let me interrupt for a moment. It's very interesting. In the Constitution, I looked that up, and we as a state are allowed to defend ourselves against an invasion.
Yes, we are.
And it's absolutely there.
Yep, and that's what brought that up for me, is that the states have the right to defend themselves against invasion if it does not act in a timely manner to protect the states. Now, I'm 64, and I was a Vietnam vet. I went in 1963. I went through basic with the M1 Garand. When I got to AIT in Ranger School, they gave me an M14, which I fell in love with. It was a semi-automatic or selectable fire, full automatic.
David, please make your question, please. A lot of people waiting.
Okay. When you get into Congress, would you find out what happened to all the surplus M14s? And they need to shoot our troops. We're outgunned by the AK-47 on range.
I don't know anything about that issue. I thought we were going to be talking about immigration. What I wanted to point out to you on that subject is that, again, I'm someone who not only supports 1070, but when the federal government came out here in the form of Attorney General Holder and sued the state on the issue of whether or not we had the power to even, whether the governor had the power to sign that bill. I was one of the few Democrats who said this is a bad idea. I said it then, I'll say it now. This was a political move. I think it's a bad political move by the White House, and I wish they had not done it. The issues themselves were fully briefed, and we're going to move up to the federal courts in any case, with or without the Attorney General getting involved. And as you probably know, that's now been packaged up and is on its way up to the Ninth Circuit and eventually to the Supreme Court. And an asterisk, or something that's worthwhile for listeners to think about, is that the Supreme Court very soon, in the next couple of weeks, is going to be in the position to hear some of those similar arguments on preemption, whether or not a state has the power to do this, with the employer sanction law that came out of Arizona about 3.5 years ago.
I believe that is December 8th.
I
believe that hearing is December 8th in the Supreme Court, and that will be an interesting view as to how they will view other issues. And a court in Pennsylvania has already ruled that the federal government must be the final arbiter of immigration law. And a law was struck down in Pennsylvania that was very similar to ours because they said that's the job of the federal government. Our phone number, 277-5827, 277-KTAR. It's interesting. We are doing a giant drive for Phoenix Children's Hospital, and you are on the board there. Jon Hulburd, is that correct?
I am. I'm on the board. I'm a proud member of the board and someone who's behind the scenes raised a lot of money for the hospital over the years. It's a labor of love.
PT in Wickenburg. Hello, PT.
Hey, I'm on the road here. I'm sorry. I just had to ask him a couple of questions. I would vote for him or anybody except for Quayle. Because you're the son or a brother or an uncle of a politician doesn't qualify you to run for office. I'm sorry. And after listening to him, I think he's got an IQ of under 100. I'd like to challenge him. Now, I want to ask you this. Why is it that we get all these horrible numbers from our government, like the unemployment rate? I know it's like nearly 15 to 20% or better, because they base it on people getting unemployment checks. Well, a lot of people can't get them anymore. They've been off the unemployment rolls for like a year or two. Get the real number. And how about outsourcing? Why give all these huge corporations money so they outsource all their jobs to Malaysia and India and the Philippines and all the island? We have people here that told me they would go to work if they could get a job doing some of that stuff. Why do we keep paying these companies to outsource the jobs? One last thing. How are we going to fix immigration? The invasion here, I'm telling you, we're outsourcing jobs right here in Arizona. We're not employing legal residents in favor of illegal residents who were working cheap under the table and working under an assumed name. We got to stop it. This is not the problem here. This is just a stop-off point. They have to keep Arizona because this is where they're coming through. They're not staying here. They're going to places like Chicago where now...
PT, are you running for office?
Listen,
because you're making a great political speech.
I'm telling you, he's got to help stop this invasion. They're not staying here. They're going other places. I think the overall agenda is to get the Hispanic population up to about 40, 50%, and then we're done. We're finished. And help get this straightened out. It's bigger than anybody realizes, and it's a sieve. The border is a sieve, and it's got to be stopped.
Jay, can I
Please.
jump in?
Yes,
thanks.
PT, thanks.
I do agree that the border is way too permeable, and we can and will fix that. And I like the caller's point that we've become a stopover for other places. But think about what that means. It means that the jobs are not here. And they were here. They've evaporated. In the last 2 years, we've lost close to 300,000 jobs in the state. A lot of them right up here in the metropolitan Phoenix area, and we have to get them back just to get to even before we start growing again. The two things I've been talking about the most on the campaign trail in the last year, one we've talked about extensively, which is how I see our tax code and certainty in our tax code as to be an engine of growth for moving forward. That's a macro one. A more micro or more district-centered one I alluded to very briefly, and it's my strongly held beliefs that clean energy future in Arizona will mean more jobs. And jobs, by the way, to the caller's point, that can't be outsourced, that won't be exported. They'll be here.
Your thoughts on the Tea Party? There are Tea Party victories everywhere. Is the Republican Party moving far to the right, or is this just is it localized as opposed to national? There's a lot of anger. Both Democrats and Republicans are angry at this administration that you might represent.
Yeah, well, to your point, I don't know, you don't strike me as someone that reads the New York Times religiously, but if you do, there was an interesting article today in the op-ed section, and it was, to me, very cynical, and it was written by a Republican on the one hand and a Democrat on the other, and both of them were trying to say, hey, Democrats, here's how you play the Tea Party, and the Republican was doing the same thing. And frankly, I read them both, and I think they missed the point. I think the point is what you said, which is that party or that movement right now is an anger movement directed at the institutions in Washington. And that's something that I think resonates not only with Republicans, but with a lot of Democrats that I've been talking to, certainly a lot of the independent folks that I've talked to all year. I've told you a couple ways tonight where I've crossed or am willing to cross my party leadership. I think it's going to be important for Ben Quayle to be in a position to do the same thing, because if he simply wants to be in lockstep with Boehner, it doesn't do him any good with those people, and it shouldn't, because the institutions are what's at fault right now. And I believe, I've said this a couple of times, I want to get in. I want to get in for a short period of time. I'm 50. I'd like to work my tail off for a couple of cycles, maybe be done by 60, be back home in Phoenix. This is not a stepping stone. I don't want to do this for the rest of my life, and I certainly don't want to be the next senator or the next anything. I think you and I both agree that should Ben Quayle win, he will be in for a very, very long time, certainly for my lifetime, and he'll probably be my kid's senior senator. So I think he's going to be part of that problem. He's going to be part of that privileged political class. And that's something that the Tea Party hates right now. And you know what? I hate it too.
Any chance, we talked about the debates, has he expressed any interest in debating? Because generally Ben Quayle has been a face that we've seen, and a couple of quick comments, and I can see the two of you debating. I think that would be a great moment.
Well, I hope we have several of those moments before people start voting.
John, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I wish I could wish you luck. I see you supporting Nancy Pelosi, and it's very painful, but you're a bright man, and you will do well. Thank you, sir, for joining us tonight.
Thanks for the time.
This is Jay Lawrence. We're going to talk about the Tea Party, and we're going to talk about some of the things one of its star candidates has had to say during her lifetime. Oh, my. Straight